go.
He owes me.
So I think we just have a few minutes left, and I just want to really quick sort of, since you brought up Jimmy Swaggert, let's kind of address that relationship really briefly.
Since I brought up Jimmy Swaggert, what's the other about where we met?
No, I think most people know we met at Jimmy Swaggert Ministries. And
who drove where?
I went to Jimmy Swaggert
Ministry.
But I didn't grow up with him, and you grew up with him, and you had a certain sort of... When you grew up, your biological father wasn't around. You did have a grandfather who was absolutely the best father that anyone could ever hope to have, but he wasn't a person who was really interested in anything spiritual or ethereal. I mean, he was a Catholic, but he was mostly like, we'll talk about it later. He just wasn't. So how did Jimmy Swaggert fulfill that role in a way that was a spiritual mentor, but also personally, you had a personal relationship with him?
Well, the only thing I can say is that, and this was probably in the first 5-6 years of my life, my grandmother, who was a very religious woman, still is to this day, you call her on the phone, you will have a come to Jesus meeting, and you will know what it means to hear from heaven, whether you like it or not. So, she brought us to church. She brought me especially, and my brothers and sisters would go occasionally. But I was shown this whole Jimmy Swaggert production as being the closeness to God. This is what holiness was. And I remember, of course, my biological father wasn't there. My mother's and mine's relationship is questionable, but anyway, I remember thinking that Jimmy Swaggert could be everything I needed to be. He could show me the way he could what he said about the Bible, what he said about Christ, what he said about music. It all just made sense to me. Okay. And I honestly cannot remember a time until later on in my teen years and early 20s ever questioning that. And so I think Jimmy Swaggert and I had a lot of similar experiences as children. We came from roughly the same part of Louisiana, the same culture, same old country ways. His grandmother was a devout Christian, Assemblies of God, and a bit of a broken family the same way. And I think we both just kind of, I hate to use the word, but I think we kind of clung to religion. Because it was the only thing that made sense. How could the people that were supposed to love us treat us that way? How could we be so outcast? And so we realized from young ages that we didn't fit in. And I've spent a lot of time wondering why I saw Jimmy Swaggert that way. And honestly, Jimmy Swaggert saw a lot of himself in me. And I saw a lot of myself in him, or at least I wanted to. Of course, I was developing around that. And Jimmy was just... He said all the right things. It sounds good. You got the potential to be the greatest we've ever had. You know the charisma. If any of y'all have ever seen him, you know it doesn't really matter what he says. You're going to believe it. He's like Bill Clinton. But he was stern when he scolded me, and I learned from it. But for me, just hearing that I was doing a good job and that it sounded great, it was like manna from heaven. And so I fed on that. And
well, I hate to cut you off, but I think that we're about to go to discussion questions. Good job.
Thank you.
So, yeah.